Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of Ice Cave Radio. That's right, Doa and CHARM3R here with you once again on the eve, the penultimate day before, well, I guess it's 2 days. It's Wednesday and it comes out on Friday. We're recording this before Shadows of the Galaxy comes out. Super exciting. We get our first new set for Star Wars Unlimited. This, of course, is a podcast where we focus on mostly Star Wars Unlimited, but it's a podcast technically about all Star Wars card games. It can be. We've got other cards from other games, but we don't talk about them too much anyway. It's mostly Unlimited, but we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, CHARM3R. Are you excited? Are you ready? I'm hyped about all the topics we've got today.
I am very excited for this episode because we got some spicy news. I thought we might be on what I would describe as like a news downturn, given that the launch is right around the corner, and then they went and they hit us with some additional intel. So I'm excited for that, but I'm also just excited in general because on the one hand, yes, I have played with the cards, right? I went to a pre-release this weekend. I had a good time, but
Big
I've
stack.
I've already got scheduled drafts, and draft is like my favorite way to play limited. I love draft in this game, and my local game store was like, hey, because the game is releasing, we're just going to run draft for the first couple of weeks.
Cool.
And that also has me very, very excited because I learned a lot, I think, about this set from playing in the pre-release, at least from a limited standpoint. And I think that's going to shape how I approach the draft. And so I'm looking forward to putting some of my theories into action. But yeah, just a lot to be excited about. Yeah. Great cards, great game, and great news. So
well, we've got a very interesting cave poll to talk about too, which I suppose we should kick everything off with that and usually do the intro. I kind of seized it, but I'll cede it back to you. Go ahead.
No, if you want it, you can have it, sir.
Okay.
It's not like I own it.
I suppose.
There is no ownership of the intro. So,
well, in that sense,
if
then,
anything, you will save me. So
it's the cave poll of the week. This week's cave poll was a little bit different than usually what we do. Normally, it's like an opinion question. It's kind of a fun thing, but I thought we would have a little bit of fun this week by just doing some data collection because we know a lot of people out there that listen are going to pre-release tournaments. They went to a bunch over the weekend, and I thought it would be a cool idea to just ask them what leaders they saw win and just get sort of a loose data point of what leaders were excelling in sealed, were excelling in pre-release over the weekend. And I will say there's a big disclaimer with this. There's a big caveat with this that don't take this for the gospel truth of what leaders are strong in this set, because of course, first of all, we're only talking about sealed. Constructed is very different. Second of all, we could have had people who voted who were at the same event and saw the same leaders win, so that would obviously add on to more of a certain leader even though it came from the same event. There's a lot of asterisks with this. This is just supposed to be a loose look at what leaders were doing well in a very general sense. Just a fun topic for conversation, not a tier list of any stretch. I'd like to do one of those later though. But let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at the results. Before we do though,
the very definitive, nothing unscientific whatsoever tier list.
Before I reveal it though, I want to know who you think took number one, CHARM3R.
Who I think took number one?
Did you look at the results yet? Do you already know?
I have not. I have not looked at the results. I was actually trying to not look.
All right. I had to see it when I was putting this together today. But who do you think win or won?
I am going to say, man, based on what I was seeing, I'm going to say Cad Bane.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Cad Bane.
Do you want to do second place too while you're at it? Just because?
Yeah,
Why
second
not?
place is a bit of a toss up for me between Bosk and Ray.
Okay.
All
right.
I'm gonna say Cad Bane.
Okay, you say Cad Bane. I would have thought the same thing. However, it was actually Ray by a bit of a margin. According to our poll participants that they saw win pre-releases, Ray coming in with 13 votes there. Cad Bane was second with 20% of the votes. Again, not the giant sample size, but again, a loose general look at it. Han Solo came in third with 5 votes. Boba Fett and Bosk were right behind there. Jabba the Hutt was on the list. The one that I'm surprised about is a Dr. Aphra way down there. I'm like, are people trolling? Did they actually see a Dr. Aphra win a pre-release? It's not impossible. And she can be very strong very quickly sometimes. And, by the same token, if you put some pretty sweet stuff in your 3 cards that you're returning, I guess you can kind of do it. I think, again, I think she's going to be an interesting leader to build around in Limited, but I'm very surprised to see her have a win of any kind. The 2 I'm a little bit surprised about too are Finn and Hondo didn't get any wins, according to people that participated that went to pre-releases. A lot of people were talking about playing Finn going into it, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people did. And I personally saw multiple people playing Hondo, but and some of them were having middling success, but it was enough to where I'm like, all right, well, I guess if you get enough, cheap smuggle stuff and get his ability rolling early, maybe you can lock one in, but it doesn't look like that's the case. What's your take on this list, seeing this now?
It makes sense. I'll admit, I was trying not to be biased.
Sure.
I'm one of the people who voted for Rey because Rey is what I played, and I went undefeated at my pre-release. Mm-hmm. So I guess I could have just trusted it, but I felt like from a numbers standpoint, right? When I was kind of thinking about what I was seeing, I was winning on Rey, but I didn't feel like my deck was strong. And I know that's really weird to say, right? When you're winning and you don't feel like your deck is strong, but I just felt like I was seeing more powerful things occurring.
Yeah.
And that I was just finding good ways to navigate it, as opposed to feeling like Rey was powerful, if that makes sense. And specifically, so the reason I was selecting Cad Bane was because I saw a lot of really good cunning stuff. This event really just amped up what I thought about cunning in this, especially in the limited formats. I also, as far as the Finn thing goes, I feel like for a lot of folks, they probably just didn't open Finn because it is a rare leader, so there's kind of a lot that has to go well. Yeah. And while there are some very, very strong things in Vigilance, and we'll talk about that when we get to the meat of it, there's also a lot of pretty mediocre Vigilance cards too, right? So if you did open Finn, but you got the wrong half of the good Vigilance commons and uncommons, then you'd be stuck not running him anyway.
Well, part of it, too, is I think people are realizing that Finn is a little bit more difficult to pilot than they think he is, because a lot of times you're like, ooh, do I want to get rid of that upgrade? Because, you don't really want to get rid of, the card upgrades. You want to get rid of, not shield tokens, that's what he makes, XP tokens mostly. So you want to try to find cards that, produce multiple XP tokens and exploit that, right? So I think people are realizing, and this is also based on kind of the conversations I'm seeing around the leader Finn, that he's a little bit tougher to build and use than people expected. So I think a lot of people, especially if they opened a Finn and a Rey, are just gonna be like, well, Rey's just easier to pilot, so I'm going for that. She's strong. I voted for Cad Bane. I went undefeated at 2 pre-releases over the weekend with Cad Bane, both Cad Bane Command. And we'll talk about those decks later. We've got screenshots of all 3 of our decks, and we're going to go through and talk about each one, why we picked what we picked, how they played out, just to sort of do a post-mortem on the pre-release, which I think will be kind of fun. But I came into it really wanting to play Cad Bane. I feel like free damage is just so strong. So, if you got the card pool and I guess I did get the card pool both times, it's, and if you kind of know what you're doing, he's, I think, one of the easier heroes to leaders, rather, to do well on. Not to mention when he flips, he's just so strong.
He's massive when he flips.
He's huge. He's got 8 HP. The guy's he's a beefy bounty hunter for sure. And it works so well when you play him, and then on the flip turn you capture something with the cunning bounty hunter card that gives him a shield too. And it's like you take a unit, you give him a shield. He's like a 4/8 when attacking. It's just such a huge flip turn with him in so many different scenarios. So he's just a strong leader, and his abilities is crazy. So he's also going to be very good and constructed, by the way. Watch for that. So anyway, it worked well for me. The one that I think the one that I want to mention, I want to shout out Jabba the Hutt there. The people that got it, and the people that didn't. But the people that understood that when you play Jabba the Hutt and you have a 12 health leader on the board, it becomes very difficult for your opponent to do a lot, especially if you throw a couple upgrades on him. So the people that did Jabba well that I saw did the smart thing and just loaded up upgrades on a giant Jabba and just made this like giant unkillable unit basically. And if your opponent didn't have Rivals Fall, then you just got to kind of run over the board with Jabba, which was hilarious. More on that later. But yeah, any other final thoughts on this list here? I guess I thought Gar Saxon would do a little bit better, but I didn't see a lot of people playing him. Did you?
I didn't see folks playing him, and that was one of the things I was kind of hoping to kind of retouch on after seeing it in action, because I thought he was going to be better positioned than he is, but I think in practice, the biggest problem that he has is that the consistency of getting upgrades is actually lower in this set than I originally anticipated. He's nice if your opponent is potentially playing a bunch of bounties on your units, but that's the other thing I noticed was that I wasn't seeing a lot of people like actively playing bounties. Yeah. And even the ones that weren't doing so in a way where like the Gar Saxon interaction would have mattered very much. I don't know if that will change over time. There is obviously a bit of a learning curve on, week one of pre-release season versus a couple of weeks down the road. So maybe things will change, and then maybe Gar Saxon will pick up steam as bounties potentially become more popular. But at the event that I was at, not even just in my games, but just as I was kind of like leaning over after my games are done or whatever and looking around, I just didn't see a lot of bounties flying around. And so,
I think that
impacts it.
People seemed more hesitant than I expected to play them. I think because when you really sit there and you look at that card, you're like, all right, I got to play it on my opponent's unit, and then I have to have a way to get rid of that opponent's unit. And then, like, once I do, am I going to be able to use that benefit right then? And I think, and in a pre-release situation at least, that was kind of like too many mental hurdles for a lot of people to get through, where once we get into more of a constructed meta with the set and people kind of understand the gameplay flow of using bounties and things, we're going to see a lot more of them. But I understand why people would shy away from them in pre-release, because it's just sort of an added factor that you don't need when you're trying to, win more packs and all that. So I get that a little bit. That said, Gar Saxon I think is a pretty decent leader all around, So I played against one, I believe, in my first pre-release, but I didn't really see any others. But that was an interesting one as well. But that's it. That's all I got for the cave poll. Thanks to everyone who voted. Appreciate the data. It was a fun conversation. Bosk and Boba Fett obviously doing well too there. But yeah, and unless you have any other final thoughts, I think I'm ready to move on, because we got some promo cards to talk about.
Yeah, I guess we can move on from the cave poll to our news, our exciting news.
We have news.
The news is that there are going to be some promos available at certain events throughout the year, including Gen Con, which I will be attending, and I will, whatever it takes, whether it's standing in line or whatever you got to do, I will be picking up this set of promos. The article that was released outlines that the set itself will be $100, but that these cards are, and you can tell from the ones that have already been released, right? These cards are not mechanically unique, right? They are just like an alternate art treatment. So if you are worried about, hey, I can't make it to this convention, but I want to play with this card, you don't have to worry about that. But perhaps the biggest chunk of news related to all of this is the final 2 units that are included, because we have 3 units from set 1, Count Dooku, Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine. We have Kylo Ren from set 2. And then they went and they just dropped our first, I guess, spoilers for set 3.
Yeah.
We're officially in spoiler season again.
Apparently so. Twilight of the Republic is the name of that set, I've been told.
Those 2 are Asajj Ventress and Darth Maul. So in case you hadn't figured it out, this is very clearly meant to be a Sith-themed series of promos. The art treatment is great. It's a lot of, black and white and gray. And then where the color pops is, for the most part, on sabers and or force powers. So the Palpatine it's mostly black and white. The Force Lightning is blue. And then because of the blue lighting up his robe, that's technically not black and white. Similarly, with Darth Vader, it's like a black and white, but his costume still has some of the coloring, but it's mostly there to show off the lighting that is being done from the lightsaber. And it's the same with all of them. Because of the way they do the lighting, I think the Darth Maul one looks outstanding. And that's the one I think artistically I'm most excited for. But I just really like this art treatment, and they picked some fantastic characters. And I love Asajj Ventress. I've been saying it for a while. The moment I get Ventress, I am, she is right after Sabine. So Sabine, I always mention it. That's my favorite character. But Asajj is my very clear number 2. I love Ventress, and now so I'm really excited for set 3. I guess
the natural question now is, unit confirmed. Will we get a leader? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But the big thing I think on these is that on the Asajj Ventress card in particular, there's a bit of text that surprised a lot of people. It appears to be a new keyword. It says exploit 2. So exploit, I would imagine, is the keyword. The 2, it seems like, raid 2, whatever. It seems like there's a number attached to this one as well. So the question is, what does it do? How do we exploit things in Star Wars Unlimited? So I think everyone's very curious to see what the actual text of that is, and who knows how long we'll have to wait, because set 2 is coming out in a couple days. Kind of surprising to see a couple set 3 cards already, and one with a keyword nonetheless. But when will they reveal that keyword?
Yeah, I have no idea when they're going to, but I have some suspicions that this is going to be something that is I think it's going to be combat oriented for one, but I think it's going to be in a direction that we haven't necessarily seen yet. I don't know what exploit does, but just looking at the cards, so I guess we should do our typical spoiler read off thing, right? So Asajj Ventress is a 4-cost ground unit with villainy and aggression. Has Force, Separatist, and Sith as the tags. Has a 2/4 body with exploit 2, whatever that is. But also says, on attack, if you've attacked with another Separatist unit this phase, this unit gains +3/+0 for this phase. So it's a 2/4 that can become a 5/4 when attacking if you have attacked with another Separatist unit. And then obviously it has whatever that exploit 2 is. But for me, when I think about some of the things that potentially fit here, I would like to see exploit 2 be something like the defender gets whatever the value is as a minus for their attack. Specifically because Ventress is an assassin. This is on an aggressive unit. Aggression likes to just do things now. I know that we have similar mechanics that already exist in the game.
It sounds very Jyn Erso when you put it that way,
Yeah. But I was just about to say, I think codifying it into a keyword would make an awful lot of sense. And it's not uncommon for card games to do that, where you take an existing mechanic and then because you just want to revisit it, you codify it into a keyword.
Yeah.
So that is not an uncommon thing. It could be something else entirely, right? But I just think about the idea of, if you want an assassin, the assassin, theoretically should be taking out other units and potentially not taking that damage back because you catch them by surprise or whatever. And we've also seen thematically some of that stuff manifested in other ways as well, right? I think about Fennec and Chrysanthemum and how they can attack into units without taking damage back as well.
Yeah.
But I think something a bit more, for lack of a better term, up close and personal also makes sense.
Raid is essentially plus attack on attack. Well, that's exactly what it is. So maybe, why can't we have something that's like minus defender attack on your attack? I could see that, I guess. You're right. Other card games do that. For me, I'm always so bad at this, I feel like, because it's like, how do you What are you exploiting? I think that's the key to this keyword. What is being exploited here? And
Right.
we'll have to kind of wait and
Well,
see. I suppose.
I was thinking like it could be like exploiting defenses, but we kind of already have Saboteur to go around shields.
Yeah.
So like maybe exploit is
Resource
something
messing with
where,
stuff, maybe.
yeah, it could be like an execute effect. I think that would be really hard to pull off like rules wise.
Man.
It could be clunky, but like
Yeah,
hear me
that
out,
would
right?
be-
If you have something where it's like exploit, so like maybe exploit 2 is when Asajj attacks a unit with 2 or less remaining HP, defeat that unit instead.
Oh, I like
So
that, actually.
That would be a way
Yeah.
where she doesn't take the damage back, and it could go through shields, but it would still separate itself from Saboteur and whatever, right? The only reason I wonder if it like, and again, it's not uncommon for certain units to get things thematically, even if it's outside of the color pie, but that feels like something that would be very vigilance
Yeah, it
instead of
does.
aggression to me.
Yeah.
And so that's my hesitation with that. But I do think, whether that's what this is or that shows up sometime in the future, that would be a really cool mechanic to explore as well.
Sure, and I suppose you never know. I mean, we've got plenty of keywords that appear on multiple colors in the game, so exploit just might be one of those types of things too. So I don't know, a lot to think about as we move forward, but certainly a cool set to keep an eye out for. I don't know if I'm going to get to make it to any of the cons this year, but if I did, I'd probably pick one up.
Real quick before we move on, we should, for our audio listeners, read off Darth Maul as well. Now, Darth Maul does not have a keyword, but has a really cool ability that, again, is very thematic. So Darth Maul is a 5-cost villainy aggression unit. It's a ground unit. Has Force and Sith tags, 5/6 body, and the text very simply says, this unit can attack 2 units instead of 1. So the double-sided lightsaber, the infamous, I'm going to ignite the other side of this thing and fight Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, gets manifested in Darth Maul. And I love the simplicity of this design, and I appreciate that, honestly, he's a mountain of stats. A 5/6 for 5 is pretty good, and you're going to need that extra health if you're attacking 2 units instead of 1.
Well, I mean, imagine if you can ambush this guy in, right? I mean, you're just coming in with some pretty insane board control, right? Because I would imagine, I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see how it all works exactly, but if he can fight 2 units instead of 1, you would imagine he would just do his damage to those 2 units and then just take whatever the combined total it is from those units back again. I don't think you would be able to like attack a base and a unit. I think it's either attack the base or 1 or 2 units, depending.
Yeah. I mean, it says 2 units specifically, so I
don't think
the
you
real
can
question
split it like that.
is more so like an order of operations thing. Like what happens if 1 unit has a when defeated trigger. And again, like all things in this, I would wager that it's going to be active player chooses order of triggers. So I think it'll be pretty easy. But yeah, you mentioned the ambush thing. 5 is capable to be ECL'd.
Yep.
So that is a very relevant line of play.
Now, he's aggression, so you'd have to be running a red-green deck, which I feel like has been a little bit tricky to put together in outside of like Sabine, We saw a little bit of Han Solo doing it too, but maybe there'll be more support for it in this set.
At the tail end of set 1, when I was trying to find something to do that was not Sabine, I was playing an awful lot of Darth Vader green.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's green red. Never mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of
and
that.
I think that Maul would fit into that list for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, either way, yeah, 5 for 5/6 can do a lot of things. Attack 2 units instead of 1 is pretty great, pretty strong. Do we want to guess the rarity? Because some of these are legendary and some of them are rare. Of the ones that are, like Vader's a legendary, Dooku, Palpatine, and Dooku and Palpatine are rare. Kylo Ren is a legendary. So, do we want to try to guess the rarity too? Because it just says we just have the starter icon on these for the moment.
Yeah, I will say I think that Asajj is a rare and Maul is a legendary.
That's my guess too.
The reason I'm thinking that is because we already got a rare Maul in set 2.
Yeah.
And so I think Darth Maul in this fashion, and honestly, attacking 2 units is really strong. Like that's a pretty unique thing. I think that being legendary just for the sake of, because we've talked about in the past that sometimes the rarity is more so about limiting how often it shows up in limited play.
Sure.
I think that Darth Maul being a rare is a lot more scary than if he's a legendary where you don't see him nearly as often.
Yeah, it's too strong for rare, I think. Everything about that card is just like too good for rare. Whereas Asajj Ventress, like, yeah, she looks okay. She looks like a good card, but doesn't look like a legendary quality card to me.
So my train of thought was there is I have no idea what Exploit 2 does. Could be bonkers, right?
Yeah, that's true
but
too.
Given that I don't know what that does, the reason I was leaning toward rare is because the second half of her text is conditional, right?
Yeah, you don't see a lot of that in
attack,
Legendary.
if you've attacked with a separatist, then do the thing. That feels less like every time I play it, it's insane and limited. So
Yeah, I agree. Well, there you go. There's a set. Exciting stuff. Dooku, Vader, Palpatine, Ren, Ventress, and Maul. I don't know why I just used all their last names, family names. What do you think Maul's first name is? Luke Maul. Or no, at the end he's like, "No, I'm Maul Skywalker."
Wait, does he even have a last name? Because I think his brother just went by one name as well. Right?
Oh, his brother was just his brother was Savage Opress, which is one of the worst names in Star Wars history, by the way. I'm like, come on. We're a little bit on the nose there with that one, guys.
Yeah, so because the reason I always forget about the oppress part is because I always remember that the names were Maul, Savage, but to me it's Savage. Like, we all know it's supposed to be Savage.
Of course.
They were just trying to be cheeky. And then
Savage.
Feral is the other one, right? But Savage is the only one where they actually say like a second name. So in my head, for whatever reason, it's like you just have Maul, Savage, and Feral. Like, that's how I remember it. But
maybe it's Timothy Maul.
Timothy Maul?
Tim for sure.
I'm going to go with Ray.
Ray Maul. Yeah, I can see that. I'm going to go with, I've changed my mind. It's the first one is Mini. It's Mini Mall. Or Strip Mall. Mega Mall. Mall of America. I don't know.
Oh,
it's a lot of. There you go. His last name is of America.
Wait a minute. If you were allowed to do card alters the way that you always see floating around, doing a Darth Maul where like they change his clothes to be something like really obnoxious, like red, white, and blue flag on his robes or whatever, and then calling him Mall of America would be so good.
But like, do you know about the Mall of America, right? The for a long time the world's largest mall in Bloomington, Minnesota, in the Twin Cities. The Mall of America. It's not really a patriotic thing. It's just a giant mall.
No, so, I'm aware. We were at an event together in the mall.
That's true. That's why I was confused.
The first time we met in person.
Yeah.
But if you're doing alters, like part of the fun of alters is that you do something obnoxious with it, right? So I want it to be the Mall of America. So it's a double play on words.
I like it. I like it. And he's holding a double-bladed fireworks instead of lightsabers.
Oh, yeah. I could see that.
Yeah. That works. All right. Well, send us your best Mall of America alters on
if
Twitter,
it's with this new
Discord.
Mall art, you make it so that the top part of the staff has the flag on it, like he's holding a flagpole.
Yeah, there you go. There's a lot of things you could do. Put a little Uncle Sam hat on his head. Give him a little Uncle Sam beard. All right, like I said, send us your Photoshops. Find us in the Discord. Find us on Twitter.
Oh my gosh, I need a Count Dooku where he looks like a vampire.
Count Von Count Dooku.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You hear the people are calling the villain in Acolyte Smilo Ren.
Yeah, we had talked about that.
That's right.
I am
funny.
Sadly not 100% caught up because of my travels this weekend. So I've been up through episode 5, but I have not seen the 6th yet.
All right. No comment there. 7 just came out last night, by the way.
Well then I'm 2 behind that.
There you go. How shameful. Let's move on to our main topic of the day, which is to go over our sealed decks. So you played in one pre-release. I thought I was only going to have time to play in one pre-release, and then I ended up getting an opportunity to do a second one on Saturday. I decided to take a picture of each of my decks before I played in it. You took a picture of your deck as well. And we thought we would just talk through them, talk about why we picked what we did, a little bit about the pool, and then kind of how the deck performed. So the question is, who wants to go first? I've got two. You've got one. Do you want to go with yours first? Because mine are like both Cad Bane green, but they're different.
Yeah, I mean, we can go with mine.
Okay. Sure. Let me bring up yours.
I also have mine in front of me just because I wanted to be able to reference it just in case. And also I like holding cards. I only got to play in one, in large part because I was traveling with family and visiting friends in Ohio. The good news is one of my local stores is going to run another round of pre-releases this upcoming weekend.
Cool.
So I'm hoping to still attend one more, even though obviously the game releases set 2 on Friday. So it's not truly a pre-release, but it's going to be the same format, same pre-release kits, etc. So I'm really looking forward to that. But now that you've got the image up, I was on Ray and I was on Ray Command. So that if you're watching, the one glared card is just the green base. Sorry about that. If you're listening, I was on Ray Command. And the main reason that I ran this, if I'm being 100% honest, is that I didn't have anything else I felt was good. I had a Cad Bane in my pool, so like I could have played him, but my underworld count, like when I was going through it as a total, was I think only like 11 cards, and most of them are in this deck in the command side. Like I barely had anything in cunning.
Yeah.
So my underworld count was awful. The other problem that I had was that I opened a couple of the like rare build around leaders. So those were basically just like dead opens. I opened a hunter. Don't really want to play him in this format. I was just very limited. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play Ray because she's at least good for kind of stalling out the game and has that great restore. And then the other game plan, and the main reason that I went with this is because beyond just being able to have access to a bunch of restore, by playing heroism and command together, I had access to a lot of space, and I think space kind of comes at a premium. So my early game is mostly centered around just playing anything that has 2 or less power and then trying to buff it. It was not uncommon, for example, for me to play the privateer cruise, even just as a 2/2, just so I had something on the board. I did have the one Y-Wing. That was like my best opener. I did also have one copy of Clone Deserter. So the one time that I got to, play Deserter and then buff him felt as good as we all anticipated. So after I do that, my game plan, if possible, was to play the Outlaw Corona, the 3/5 space unit. It's got a bounty, which could potentially be a bonus for my opponent, but because space is, again, so hard to find units for to begin with, and the 3/5 stat line on that thing, especially in limited, is such a big, powerful presence.
Yeah.
A lot of times if I played that on turn 2, I just owned like the space lane for the rest of the game. After that, it was a lot of just like trying to not fall too far behind on the ground and then continue to play space units. I opened 2 of the patrol wings that you can see here in the image. So if you don't remember, that is the 5 cost 4/6 in space that also, when played, you can attack with something. If you have initiative, it gets a bonus. I did not open hardly any real removal. So I have 1 Rival's Fall. And then I didn't get any of the like capture cards. So those patrol wings also really had to be my removal options. I found myself taking initiative often and then playing them and then just trading up with, a subpar unit.
Yeah.
But that was, again, like how I was getting ahead. Rares that I was playing, I had choose sides there. You can see at 7. That was an all-star. I won every game that I played that card because in this set, not only was it like, oh, I can take your best unit as long as it's not a leader, but a lot of times the whole point of this set is like there are bounties, right? And so the few times that people did play bounties on my units, like I had an Outlaw Corona and then they played another bounty on it. And then I was like, okay, well, you have it now. And then I just killed it with a patrol wing and got all the bonuses. That card was just outstanding. So choose sides did wonders for me. Another rare that I was playing was Evidence of the Crime. And that card, I think, has a lot of upside. And I'm sure in Constructed, there's going to be some really powerful uses, but I'm going to be entirely honest. I most often used it for like stealing a shield or an experience token. But that was still good enough. Like,
Yeah,
that's what was blowing my mind. Specifically in Ray Mirrors. So I had one copy of Rose Tico, excuse me, not Tiku, Tico. She is a house, very difficult to deal with when you can play her, get off the one attack and get her up to 8 health. If you can buff her with Ray before you attack and then she becomes a 5/9, it's a really, really bad time for your opponent. But in one of my mirror matches, they played a Rose and I played a Rose, and then I Evidence of the Crimed their shield token over to my Rose so that I could like double trigger on her, and that was very spicy. The rest, if I'm being honest, was filler most of the time. Because I knew it was going to be filler, I just tried to play as many smuggle units as I could because I knew I was going to be resourcing them often, and then if needed, I could play them later. Privateer crew, like I said, I was running 2 of those because worst case scenario, I can buff it with Ray, or I can, play it as a 5/5 later. That was the same thing with the Star Trooper, I believe is what it's called. Sorry, it's blurry on the image.
Star Trooper, where?
Star Hopper, excuse me. Collection
okay.
Star Hopper. So that was a very similar situation where, it's a 2/2 body. So when I play it, I can buff it if needed, but a lot of times it was just a resource that would pop out later. A card that surprised me quite a bit in this list was the Twin Pod Cloud Car, being able to play a restore unit in space and then buff it with Ray, did wonders. Similarly, the Street Gang Recruiter, I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but I used it. 9 times out of 10, the only unit I was able to get back was Modded Cohort, but it didn't matter. That was good enough because Modded Cohort is a great unit, and it's even better in Ray because it's buffable by Ray too. So being able to play that twice was a pretty big deal. But yeah, it was, I'll be honest, it was not what I would have considered a good deck. I did go undefeated, like I said, but I felt like it was more so my piloting than it was this being a powerful list. And it was also not uncommon for me to win games that I probably shouldn't have. There is some luck involved. My Cad Bane opponent, for example, every time they played Cad Bane, I had Rival's Fall in hand. It's one of those things where, like, if that's not the case, I probably lose. So, yeah.
That hurts. I had that happen once, and I was still able to pull it out, but I was like, oh, really? And like the guy I was playing against had his resources all like weird and messy, like people sometimes do, and so it kind of looked like they were all tapped out already, but I just wasn't paying attention like I should have, and it happened.
So there is one other really spicy thing that I loved doing that I want to point out.
Yeah.
Timely Intervention is really good. But it's even better if you have the Karaz Heavy Fighter, because that allows you to play a surprise unit in space that has Overwhelm. And then if you have any other unit where you can, activate it and give it the ability. I won 2 games by running over somebody's space unit that had 1 health, but then, because of the ambush and the Overwhelm, I was doing 5 to their base, right? In Limited, a surprise any amount of damage that your opponent was not accounting for is already good. But going all the way up to a potential of 5 just with that 2-card interaction is a pretty big deal. So that outperformed my expectations by quite a bit.
Do you remember what your opponents were?
Round 1 was a Cunning Bosk.
Okay.
Round 2 was a Command Cad Bane. I won that on the back of, like I said, the Rivals Falls. Yeah. And then choose sides. I gave them something tiny and stole one of the tanks that I didn't open any of. But those tanks, every time I played against them, were really good. Round 3 was another Cad Bane. And then the round 4 that never finished was going to be a Ray Mirror. Now I say didn't finish because the tournament was only scheduled to be 3 rounds, but they had like an odd number of people who showed up. I think I had 13 people. So there was 2 undefeateds after the event. And it was my good friend Jordan. And so him and I said like, hey, you want to just like play it out? And I was like, yeah, sure. So we played and we were 1-1, and then they closed the store on us.
Oh.
So we never got to finish.
That's when you just like, you assume you would have taken it, you know, because that game you lost was way too close, you know.
Well, no, actually, it's funny because I think he had a better deck than me. So he was on Ray as well, but he had opened the Kylo Legendary. So it wasn't just like I have to deal with Ray, but I also had to save my rival's fall, you know, for his Kylo.
That's crazy.
He also had a Rose Tico.
All right.
Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like in Sealed you really do see the player skill come out too, because that's just one of the great things about this game too, is that like you can have the best deck in the world, but piloting how you pilot the deck is so important in this game, that in Sealed you can really make stuff work. You know, you can kind of just take what the best options are and just kind of force it, right? And yeah, that does work. It's cool to see. But man, I look at your list and I'm like, 2 Outlaw Coronas, that is huge. 2 Adelphi Patrol Wings. Like, you really are stronger in space than I think like pretty much every other deck I saw at my events was. Yeah. The Wookiees on the ground look really good too. The Wishier Tree tenders, I'm sure, are very helpful. And then yeah, Rose. Like, you've just got a lot of stuff on the ground that won't die, you know? And so when you have that, plus you have some beef in space, like, I can see this being a scary deck.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because like I have stuff that won't die, but it's also like very slow to get rolling because my turn 1 plays, other than the Y-Wing, are not great. And you could argue that even Y-Wing isn't great.
Yeah.
But yeah, like playing a Starhopper, playing, you know, playing a 2/2, whether it's space or ground, it just doesn't feel good.
Sure.
So even if I play something on, you know, turn 1, I don't have the resources to buff it. So then the next turn I have to either play another understated 2-drop and then buff my first one, or I could play a Wookiee or a Corona. A Corona always felt great. Wookiees weren't bad if I played them on turn 2, but they also still don't really threaten a lot back either. Like, you're right, they're hard to kill, but also they don't kill anything either. So I've essentially went like 2 straight turns of not threatening to remove anything off the board either, unless I hit that Corona. And so a lot of times it was, and that's why I felt like, if I'm being honest, my skill helped me a lot because I knew how to prioritize like what to attack to survive. Otherwise, I think I would have just got ran over.
Yep. Hey, I mean, shout out to the podcast. Shout out to us for going undefeated in our pre-releases. We're good. Shout out to us. Yeah. But yeah, looks like a really fun deck. I played against more Ray than probably anything else over the course of the weekend, and those matches were always the hardest one. Ray's a very good leader in this set, and with the right pool, she can be terrifying in Sealed. But yeah, you ready to move on? Any final thoughts on this deck? All right, cool. Well, let's go to my first Cad Bane deck here. So this is from my first pre-release, I believe. No, this is the second one. Hold on, I've got them mislabeled. There we go. This one is from my first pre-release, and this one was it was 34 players, and sadly we only played 3 rounds. I was like, oh sweet, we've got a ton of people, got to be 4 rounds, right? But it started at 7 p.m. They didn't want to go super past closing time, so we just did 3 best of 3s, and then handed out prizing based on best records. So in that one, I went 6-0 in games. But I was also one of 3 players that went 6-0 overall in games, and so I ended up getting third, quote unquote, because my strength of schedule was slightly weaker. So take from that what you will. But I wish we could have gotten a 4th round because I would have loved to go 4-0. But either way, this list was really fun, and I came into Sealed wanting to play Cad Bane. But I didn't think I'd be playing Cad Bane Command. I thought it was kind of unique that on our podcast last week, we ended up building a Cad Bane Command deck, and that kind of got me thinking about it. So when I looked at all my cards, and I started to kind of come to the conclusion that Cad Bane Command was the best way to go, I had to like pause for a second and be like, wait, am I just thinking this because of like recency bias that like this is just what I built? And so, I feel like I should play this because it feels more familiar. But so I was like figuring this deck out. I was figuring this out until like 5 minutes was left in the time. because I just didn't believe at first that this could possibly be the best thing to play out of my sealed pool. But it was either this or like a red-blue Gar Saxon. And looking at that deck, the thing that pushed me in this direction was that in the Gar Saxon deck, I didn't really have very many turn 1 plays. Whereas this deck, I mean, I've got the 3 Privateer Skykes. I've got the Salacious Crumb, Kinton Infiltrator, Privateer Crew, the 2 Warzone Lieutenants, which funny enough, I never played a single one of. They never came early enough. But Cloud Rider, Bazine Natel was a big pull. So I just had like a third of my deck was playable on turn 1. And so that combined with Cad Bane's ability felt like I was always going to get a decent start. And in sealed, I think that's so important. So that pushed me in this direction. Beyond that, I was like, oh, I didn't draw any McClunkies. I really want that for Cad Bane. But then I'm like, you know what? I have 5 capture cards in this deck. I've got 1 of the green, 1 of the yellow, and then 3 discerning veterans, which I was not super. One of them hyperfoil, by the way, which is very hard to say for some reason right now. And then the 2 rich rewards were just like extra filler that I had to do something, right? But I was like, okay, so maybe I can do this with sort of like a capture package, because I know I'm going to have consistent turn 1 and 2 plays. So if I can just use the combination of the basic units plus Cad Bane's ability to just keep the board clear early on. Like, I'm just using the Cad Bane ability to do enough damage to keep the board clear. I'm not really trying to get anything to stick. I can live long enough to where I can start playing things and also stealing everything they play at the same time. And that's exactly how it played out. I was able to, do exactly what I just said, right? Where keep the board clear the first couple turns, By playing things, I chose to go second in every game because I always wanted them to play something first, so then I could play my Underworld unit and do a damage to it with Cad Bane. And that ended up working out really well. I think there's a lot of reason to go second with Cad Bane, actually. I just kept it maintained, and then I would have these turns where I would like flip Cad Bane, and then I would play like a 3-drop, but I would also play Relentless Pursuit, steal whatever biggest unit they had that wasn't a leader, and give Cad Bane a shield, And so against like the Rays, I would set that up, and then I could kill Ray in 2 hits. 1 on the turn Cad Bane comes out, and then 1 on the next turn consistently, and then he would still be around, she'd be gone. Or I'd be like Cad Bane and a discerning veteran, right? So you'd steal a big unit, you'd have a 3/4 on the board, you'd have Cad Bane killing whatever would then threaten your discerning veteran, and so you maintain that captivity. And it ended up working really well. And then like late game, I could smuggle out the pirate battle tank if I needed some Sentinel. I had the Weequay Pirate Gang, which was the smuggle with ambush, which was very useful from time to time. And then Kragan Gore was just like hilarious. Whenever I got him out, I'd play like him and Cad Bane, and then they'd be like, all right, they've got a 6/6 and a 4/6 on the board, and if I want to try to race them, attack their base, I'll just put shields on them. So, which I had one person try to do, and then I'm like, all right, I'll put a shield on Cad Bane, and they were like, wait, what? And I'm like, you should read Kragan Gore.
Yeah.
And
Kragan is
he's awesome.
I will say that I played against one, and the moment he hit the board and I had the realization of like, oh wait, if I don't just remove him first, everything else is a problem.
Yeah.
And him having 6 attack meant that I was like, I had to 2-for-1 myself to get rid of it, but it was worth it, right?
Oh
like,
yeah, totally.
Kragan is a bit of a beast.
He's like Sentinel plus.
Appreciation now.
He's like Shadow Sentinel plus, because if you attack the base, you're just giving him shields, so you have to attack him. But he's a 6/6, so yeah, essentially he's a 6/6 with 6 for Sentinel with a side benefit. But also the 3 Privateer Skykes, Skykes, SCYK. How do you say that? Skyke. I've heard it. I don't know. So anyway, Psych maybe. Yeah, but either way, like just having a 2/3 shielded in space was really annoying, for people. The price on your head I didn't really end up using. I used it like once. But what was really funny with this deck, I had my second round was against a Jabba, and we had so much fun. Like both of us were just laughing the entire time, honestly, because he was running a lot of capture stuff too. And Jabba captures something. So we had one sequence where he played his Rancor and he flipped Jabba and captured something of mine. I captured the Rancor back and got my thing back. Then he captured the thing that captured the Rancor and got his Rancor back. And then I recaptured it. And then he got it back one more time. And then I froze his Rancor in Carbonite. So the Rancor was out there for like 4 turns and never got to attack once. And it was just so funny because we both just had like answers to each other's capture stuff every single time. And I ended up winning it, but man, that was probably one of the most fun series I've ever played because we were just laughing the entire time, like I said. So yeah, this deck felt really strong. Again, Cad Bane, a little bit of Cad Bane control, I guess, playing some early stuff early, doing damage with his ability, and then capturing everything later on. So it was a ton of fun to play this list, actually. Made me want to build a full constructed version of this type of thing.
I was going to say, the moment I saw your list, I knew that you should have played this with Command because of 2 things. Like 2 things when this popped up immediately jumped out at me, and that was Salacious Crumb is insane with Cad Bane.
Yes, he
and
is.
then the 3 Discerning Veterans.
Yeah.
Discerning Veteran is like one of the better removal cards in this set, in my opinion.
Totally.
It's just really good. Also, I'm sad that I didn't get any of the Pirate Battle Tanks in my list because it would have been really, really good. That's a card that I'm becoming more and more fond of. It is frustrating.
It's
and
definitely
the fact
an
that
MVP
they
card.
can and the fact that they can resource it and then pull it out later when they need to. It demands answers.
There's fun tricks you can do with the deck too, like with Cloud Rider, where you play the Cloud Rider, you have them assign the Cad Bane damage, you see where it goes, and then you choose what to ambush. There's fun tricks with like the order of when played, trigger kind of abilities that you can do. So it was fun. But yeah, when I got the 3 Discerning Veterans, I was like, man, I kind of got to do this because it's also kind of the least restrictive captive ability in on a unit, I believe, where it just has to be in a ground unit, but there's no restriction on costs like there is on Relentless Pursuit. So it's quite good. But anyway, so yeah, that list performed really well. Fast forward 24 hours, unless any final comments on that one. We go to the next one. All right.
Nope. Salacious Crumb.
Next list. Salacious Crumb was an MVP for sure. It was fun bouncing him around and doing a little bit of healing, a little bit of damage. But day 2, I opened up my sealed pack, and in this case, honestly, it was like very clear that I should play Cad Bane Command again, and I was like, no, this can't be right? But I looked through all my stuff. I really didn't have much in the way of heroism. Like I was thinking maybe I could build a Ray deck with what I had, but again, it was a situation where like I just felt like I had a lot of good early game stuff, and I just think having consistent early game turns in sealed is so vital that oftentimes I will value that more than a lot of the other cards in the deck. And I'm like, all right, well, I've got one of each capture card again. No Discerning Veterans this time, but I do have Effent Mon, which is a huge puzzle for your opponent to play around. And then I got a Fennec Shan as well. And I'm like, all right, well, that's just great late game removal and bodies. And I had another Pirate Battle Tank. So I'm like, all right, let's go for it, And so, and I also drew the 2 McClunkies as well. And so when you have 2 McClunky, it's like, all right, I've got the ability to do all this damage, by returning Underworld stuff, playing it with Cad Bane and all that. And that ended up working really well. I will say I had to work harder for the wins with this deck. This one didn't feel as strong, but I got over the finish line in my 3 rounds with this one when I needed to, right? One game I won with Moment of Glory, but otherwise that one didn't really come in super handy. But stuff like Timely Intervention, really useful, of course. Again, Weequay Pirate Gang and Pirate Battle Tank, just having that smuggle to get out a little bit later was good. And so this one played a little bit more like you'd imagine a typical Cad Bane deck would play, where you're just doing a lot of tricks or you're bouncing Underworld units around, right? Using Cad Bane's ability, using McClunky. And then again, but the theme remains where Cad Bane wants to control the early game and mostly just keep the board clear. And then when he flips, that's when you sort of try to seize control through capturing things or through playing things they can't get through, like the Battle Tank. Effent Mon was so funny, though, because it was funny seeing people try to figure out how to play around him, because they're like, all right, well, if I attack the base, like then they can capture something of mine, but if I order it this way, or if I do it in this arena, and it just made things it made life difficult, and so, and he's got 6 health, so he's hard to remove, right? And if you put him behind a battle tank and they've there was one turn where one time where I just had like the Black Sun Starfighter out in space, and they had like a massive space advantage, but they had to attack into my no, it wasn't. It was the Smuggler Starfighter, not the one with Sentinel, the one without Sentinel, but they still had to attack into it anyway because Effin Mon was out, and if they would have attacked past it, that measly little ship could have captured one of their other space units. So it effectively gave that space unit effectively gave it Sentinel, which was a neat way to kind of think of it, So Effin Mon messes everything up, which is great. Again, Reckless Pursuit or Relentless Pursuit on Cad Bane is huge. Another take captive is nice. Boba Fett's armor may seem a little bit strange to put in there, but at the end of the day, I was like, well, it's essentially just like paying a 2 for a 2/2, or it's like saving you that would have died otherwise. So it's just a decent little stat stick, to throw into a unit. So why not? In a sealed environment, worked pretty well. I never actually got to use Cobb Vanth. I was excited about that, but it just never happened. Zuckuss is a huge powerhouse. He's 5 for a 6/6, and he's got Saboteurs, so that is scary. So yeah, I think again, but the theme remained, right? Where control the board early game with Cad Bane's ability, come in with big stuff and capture late game, and just make it hard for your opponent to, do stuff with what's on your side of the board, and make it hard for them to have anything that sticks. So yeah.
I will say across both of your lists, I'm very envious of the Ruthless Assassins that you opened because I really like that card, and I didn't open any of them in my pool.
They were good. They're fragile. Like I wouldn't even put them in as like the best card in here, really. I mean, they're nice for trading, but they also got resourced a lot because I just had other stuff that I would rather play and could do more within the moment. Like a Cloud Rider. By the way, Scanning Officer was clutch in. I ended up playing against a Hondo in one of my rounds, and I was like, oh, I get to use this, and I saw the guy like looking, like he kept like looking at his resources and stuff, and I'm like, all right, he's playing Hondo. We know what he's doing here, so I didn't play it turn 1 because I wanted him to get the full 3 resources down, and I thought it was unlikely he was going to smuggle anything that early. And so then the second turn of the game, I played it, and I took out like his turn 4 play, I think it was, and he didn't look terribly happy about that. So yeah, Scanning Officer I think is a great little tech card in Sealed as well. It'll be a great sideboard card too. Oh, by the way, pro tip. If you're playing in Sealed or you're playing in Draft, I think for this, just like look at your resources every turn. Even if you're not playing any Smuggle, just always make a habit of doing it so they don't have any idea if you're running Smuggle or not, basically. Because if you only look at your resources sometimes to be like, okay, what was that Smuggle thing again? Then you're kind of telegraphing that you have Smuggle. So the answer is just to always look at your resources every single turn. Because then, maybe you do, maybe you don't, Unless you're really good at remembering, I guess. And I'm not. So I just started looking at my resources every turn, whether I had Smuggle or not. So there you go. The mind games start to enter into it too.
What if you don't look at your cards, but you are running Smuggle, but then you don't play any of your Smuggle cards because you just are bad at remembering that you had the Smuggle cards?
I'm not going to say that didn't happen at least once in the weekend. Maybe
it happened to me once where I forgot I had resource to Smuggle, and then after the game I picked it up. I was like, oh, that would have been useful.
Yeah,
I think the Vigilance one where you can heal a unit for 2 and put an experience token on it. I had just forgot that card had Smuggle.
I forget the name of it, but I know the one you're talking about. I think I did that in my first game as well, where I got to like later in the game and I just had this realization. I was like, oh yeah, I've got Smuggle in my resources. And then from that game on, that's when I instituted my look at your cards every single turn when you resource, just to refresh your memory and also be a little bit more evasive with information. So yeah, it was fun. This set was really, really fun to play in Sealed. I hope I get a chance to play more Sealed and Draft with this because, once again, this game has made me a fan of Limited. I can't believe it. It's a miracle, It's amazing stuff. So
I'm really excited to play more this weekend, especially the Draft.
I wish I could. I'm traveling this weekend, so I can't play anymore. But
well,
down the road.
Why can't you just be traveling to Michigan, and then you could play
Hey,
the
I'm going
draft
to
with me.
Minnesota, so I'm fairly close, but unfortunately, it's not the case. Maybe later, but yeah, that's it for these two decks. Again, the Wampa Radio, the Ice Cave Radio crew going undefeated in pre-releases over the weekend. So, yay us. See,
And I'm glad we're recording now, because when I play in another one on Friday and I do horribly, it won't count, right?
Yeah, but
because
like,
we're undefeated right now.
it's okay. Pre-release weekend is over. That's one that matters the most. We can say on pre-release weekend for Shadows of the Galaxy, we both went undefeated, which is true. Yeah, neither of us lost not only a match, we didn't lose a single game.
This is where I go.
awesome.
No, I did. Well, I did lose the one game, but it was
you lost the game. Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, it was that unsanctioned
that
fourth
doesn't
round where
count.
we were.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, we were 1-1, and then they closed the store on us. So I'll never know how that one would have went.
We played. I played some friendlies too, because you've always got a little bit extra time on some of those, and yeah, I didn't win every single friendly, but I wasn't playing it seriously. I was taking it easy. I was giving myself a mental break. But yeah, tons of fun. If you get a chance, if you're on the fence and you have a pre-release coming out, you could play in still or a sealed thing. Just go do it. It's really, really fun. Obviously, I love constructed the most. I never will think otherwise. But limited in this game is really, really good. So go forth and enjoy. But yeah, I think that's about it for today's show. Hopefully, looking at those decks, if you are going to be playing some more sealed stuff soon, would give you a little bit more of an idea about the philosophy behind building a little bit more too. Either way, hope you enjoyed it. It's fun to kind of go back and look at the decks that succeeded there. Love seeing all the decks in our Discord as well. Join the Discord if you haven't already, and talk about it, because the conversation's already well underway for some of these new leaders. And man, after this weekend when the set's finally out, I think everyone's going to be trying theory crafting, deck brewing, and all that. It's a great time for the set, but man, with this game, it just never ends. The deck brewing never ends in Star Wars Unlimited. This game is unfigure-outable. It's great.
I have so many decks, both with new leaders and with old leaders, that I am dying to try.
Same.
Especially after this weekend, there are a lot of cards that have surprised me enough that I want to try them in constructed, and then there are other cards that are just as good as I expected them to be, and so I am itching. I'm itching to do some brewing for this, and I cannot wait to get my hands on cards. So
well, maybe that'll be an idea for next week's episode. We'll have to chat about. Maybe we'll do our week one brews. Talk about some decks we're thinking about trying out.
We could do that, or I believe in that amazing Discord that you mentioned, some folks had talked about, like, how do you even approach deck building when a set 2 comes out, right? Like, where do you start? And I think that's actually a really good question, because there are a couple of different ways that you can approach it.
Yeah,
I think
it's a good
largely
idea.
Depends on what your outcomes are. So we could do that next week.
I like it. Well, we'll chat about it, but I like that idea too. All right. Well, that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, everybody, or listening, in case you're listening to us on any podcast platforms out there. As usual, it's been a ton of fun for Doa and Charmy here at Ice Cave Radio. Go forth and enjoy the launch of the set. It's so good. I hope the devs are out there patting themselves on the back, because this is going to be another really good step, I think, for the game. But final word, as always, from Charmer. Go ahead and do the thing.
May the Force be with you.